Welcome back. I'm glad you're still with us here on Morning at NTV. If you're just joining us, welcome on board. It's time for the Kickstarter discussion, and we shall be discussing changes in budget plans for the financial year 2024-2025. Now, before I introduce my guests who will be helping us make our way around what is no doubt one of the most significant developments in anyone's economy, let me just give you a preamble. Towards the end of last week's working days, Parliament passed a 72.130 trillion national budget, up from an earlier proposed total of 58.2 trillion, marking an increment from the last financial year, which saw a 52 trillion shilling budget. The Ministry of Finance is planning to borrow a staggering 28.768 trillion from local commercial banks to fund this particular budget. The government has also increased the amount of money it had earlier planned to borrow from the external market from 8.905 trillion to 10.977 trillion, which is a 2.071 increment from the very last. The question now on everyone's mind is, where is this leading the country? Today, I'm joined by Dr. Honorable Agnes Atim Apea. She's a member of Parliament for Amolata Women, and she's also a member of the Budget Committee as well as the Finance Committee in Parliament. Many thanks for joining us, Honourable.
Thank you very much.
We're also joined on site by economist Dr. Fred Muhumuza, whose workings and academic endeavours are directed towards ensuring that direction is offered, but most importantly, the transformation trajectory that Uganda intends to take on is a smooth one.
Yes, morning, our viewers and listeners out there. Happy to see you and a happy week.
Yes. Now, interesting developments there, of course. The budget dynamics are things that we first need to understand, because this time round, after we had gotten assurances that everything had been done and dusted, all of a sudden there was a new development, an increment that took Uganda's budget to a staggering 72 trillion Uganda shillings. That is a significant development. First, let's understand from a member who was deeply buried in the reading and debating on the budget framework paper ahead of this particular decision being undertaken. How did we get to this point?
Thank you very much, and good morning, viewers. One, we need to appreciate that as Parliament, we have a mandate to appropriate budgets for all the different sectors in this country, and that is done annually, and there is a process of how we do that. And so this budget coming to where it has not come from the blue.
That's right.
There is a budget process well laid down, and it is really to the public consumption. Now, I think about late last year, we received a budget framework paper, which was, I think, at that time was still, I think, about 58 trillion. And in that budget framework paper, the government of Uganda presents its interest, what it wants to do in the next financial year. And sectors also, through that, then the sectors gives you the details of what the money would, the budget would actually mean to their different sectors. So it is in that context that then a ministerial policy statement is presented to Parliament. Now, in that ministerial policy statement, you have all the details of what is going to be done, including the work plan, the procurement plan, the recruitment plan, and the specific issues, activities that each sector would undertake. And so up to, I think, 1 week before the passing of the budget, we as a budget committee, as well as finance committee, where I sit, we've been looking at the budget in that context of 58 trillion. But, I want to assure the country that what we call corrigenda, or government coming up with new sources of revenue and also new budget items is not a new thing. In fact, every year that we pass the budget, before we pass that budget, government will come with other plans, either to cut from a particular budget line and add more, or increase more money into a particular budget line, or introduce a new budget item. So it's really not new. What is new is that we have been receiving a corrigenda which does not really overblow the budget. It has rarely really overblown like 10% or something like that. So what is new here is that you see an increment of a 14 trillion budget. Now, as Parliament, sectors present to us their budget estimates and ministerial policy statement with additional funding requests, what they call a funding gap. And this funding gap actually normally lists so many other items which they would have loved to do, but they do not have the funds. Now, what this corrigenda of 14 trillion did, and I really want to make this clear, that it did not come with its own activities, which was not there. Most of the activities which are there were actually already provided for in the ministerial policy statement as a funding gap. Now, that is the essence of the 14 trillion, not that it just came. It was there, but there was no funding.
There was no funding.
So they come and say, okay, for these 1, 2, 3, 4 items, we were not able to present it at the ministerial policy statement, but we have identified areas where we'll be mobilizing resources to fund this particular budget line. And key among that was actually the ECOP, our obligation to pay for the oil processes that are going on. There are others like paying for the cattle compensation in northern Uganda. There was also 100 billion for Akibwa Stadium construction in Lango sub-region, and very many others. So that is what is really different in the 52 trillion from 58.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Thank you for what's no doubt a very exhaustive and enlightening preamble to understanding of the increment, which is 14 trillion Uganda shillings. But I'll have to pose this question to Dr. Fred Muhumuza. It is natural to see an upward progression in budgets year in, year out. I haven't seen where we, for example, have 58 trillion for a particular financial year, and then the next we drop to 54. That one is something I haven't seen. So it's natural to see a progression in the budget planning. But did you see this coming the way it did, the 14 trillion shilling increment, and the reasons that are given for this particular hype?
Yeah, thank you. Good morning once again. I don't think anybody saw this coming, possibly not even Ministry of Finance itself, going by the many corrigendas that have gone in. And I think Honorable Semujunganda identifies even the first figures were neither here nor there. There were multiple figures picking on the same aspect.
That's right.
So it looks like it was really a jumbled up process in a way that things kept coming in and flying in, and others going out. Of course, we always get priorities, but at that point of finalization of the budget, we say what is a priority of a priority. And now I'm looking here at the report of the committee. What we call first call, what we call first call. Yeah. The items that only go to Parliament for information. Not even Parliament can change them anyway, because they took the decision earlier. Yeah. And the bulk of this is borrowing. So when I take a loan to government to borrow and do Karuma as a dam, you have committed for the next 20 years or 15 years or 30 years, when that loan will be paid, you have committed resources to that. So when we come to you and say this is amortization or debt repayment, we are only informing Parliament. They are not supposed to take a decision because they took the decision. We shouldn't put them on the spot at one point in time. They took that decision.
The first call.
But now, as we say in planning, you don't want to finish off your degrees of freedom, what we call fiscal space. Don't commit and pay all the fees, even if you have some money. Sometimes you want to leave something behind and say, what if a child falls sick? And I have just paid fees, but now the child for the whole term is not going to go to school.
It's not also good to pay up everything because you lack the motivation to go for medicine.
So you want to say, as Ugandans say, if you can delay with that money for another week, you can make some more money out of it. And that's the this financial discipline.
Okay.
Now, what I am seeing that is happening with the government is that space has shrunk, if not been wiped out. Because if you're talking of domestic refinancing, 12 trillion. Now, that means 12 trillion, not even Parliament has a say.
Yeah.
You are talking of external debt payment, 3 trillion. You don't have a say. So that's already 15 trillion of your 72. You're talking of interest payments, 9 trillion. You don't have a say. Appropriation in aid is really local government money that will leave it with them. But it's small amounts. So when you look through the budget, and the domestic refinancing, of course, when you look through the budget, almost 35, close to 35 trillion.
Yeah.
Which is almost half of the budget. Not even Parliament has a say. They're just receiving figures and looking at them. Then you get into wages. Wages get the second call on resources. And you're not talking about 7 to 9, close to 10 trillion.
Yeah.
Because there are other wages that are not official. When you see what was being reinstated and what is like wages of consultants, wages of, you know, those other hidden kind of wages. So you have another 9 to almost 10 trillion. You are now at 45. You haven't decided, what do I do? But all these are determined for you. So you're like stuck in a jam. No matter whether you're running to theater to operate a patient or you're a police officer going to arrest a criminal, there is no one thing you can do. Somebody just snatched your phone, you're in the jam. Do you leave the car there? Do you run after the phone thief? You don't want to find yourself in that situation. And I think that for me is the worrying part of government, that even when they want to do something, they will eventually not be able to do that critical thing. And one of the critical things we're talking about is actual service delivery.
That is right.
You look at our roads across the country, and I just want to talk about roads in Kampala. It's roads across the country. You would want to make them work, but you don't have that ability. You look at patients in hospitals, you look at schools, you want to put money there. Now, you end up with security. It's usually the third, but quite often security can be the first call on resources. And that's why you are seeing we are now having to balance out the act with Bank of Uganda. Because when interest matures, you need to pay immediately to your creditors. Or else people look at you as a non-viable borrower. But then when you don't have money, then a neighbor will come in. This is what banks do with the guarantors. Don't take away Genyi's farm, please. I guaranteed him, let me jump in for him. Now already you begin to see that's not a good situation for a country to find itself in.
Okay. Honorable Pair, in terms of prioritization of the various aspects of the national budget, Dr. Muhumuza talks of service delivery as the key imperative, but of course there are challenges already even before the budget is read to the nation. When you were in the thick of discussing the various locations and the calls to the various sectors, where did you see what maybe you could describe as timely allocation, or money going to where exactly it's supposed to be going in terms of what we need to be pushing across these various priority areas? Very quickly.
Thank you very much. I want to pick it up from where Doctor has stopped, the issue of fiscal space. It is true that our debt refinancing and debt payments are really squeezing the fiscal space. And it is true that what we have available is just 37 trillion. If you pick the 35 trillion for the first call, debts and Bank of Uganda and everything, it takes about 35 trillion.
That's right.
You're remaining with 37 trillion for now. There's supposed to be service delivery. But from that, you pick also the what we call in financing, the statutory obligations, like the rent, the utilities, the salaries and all that. So literally, you are left with about 20 trillion. Now, in that 20 trillion, then you have your 18 to 20 programs. What we know is that the highest program that has taken this money is 26%, which is for human development. And human development involves things like programs like health, education. And when you go in there, it is also not the building of the hospital. It's actually the paying of teachers and the paying of the medical workers, which takes the biggest chunk. Then 24% goes to security, which now, for example, now, education, human capital development and security takes almost 50% of that budget. So literally you're remaining with less than 10 trillion, you know, which is quite a limited amount of money to be able to address some of the things. But if you go into the budget, you'll see that yes, as a country, we know that our biggest strategy at the moment is really to ensure the household income. And so under that, you will see that we've put money for PDM, and we've also been able to address the issue of commercial agriculture. Not much, but at least we've been able to provide for that. So the household income that involves the PDM issues, the commercial agriculture, and then unfortunately areas that we would have actually paid much more attention and given more money because they would then generate revenue and there would be some bit of return to investment are the areas, for example, of tourism, where we've only allocated about 0.4%, very little money, and mineral development. Okay. And you're aware that as a country we have as much minerals. What we lack now is an investment to explore and be able to put it in the market and generate the expected revenue that we have. Okay. Yeah.
All right, thank you very much. We're going to have to take a break right now, but we shall be back with this discussion as we try to excavate all the needed aspects of the budget for the financial year 2024-2025 ahead of its reading in June. Do stay with us. We'll be right back. Welcome back. I'm glad you're still with us here on Morning at NTV. It's the Kickstarter, and we are discussing the budget for the financial year 2024-2025 that will be read in June. Before we went into the break, I was speaking to Honourable Agnes Atim Apea, the woman member of Parliament for Amolata. She's also a member of the Budget and Finance Committees of Parliament. I also have with me in the studio Dr. Fred Muhumuza, seasoned economist and a commentator. We've now been joined by Honourable Mwanga Chivumbi Muhammad, the MP for Butambala County. He's also the chairman of the Public Accounts Committee as well as the Buganda Parliamentary Group. Many thanks for making it this morning.
I just sit on the Budget Committee incidentally.
Ah, okay. You're a man
Not
of many hats.
incidentally, you're a member.
I'm a member.
And a long time one.
Because I now chair committee, all chairpersons of committees of Parliament. Okay. Are ex-officials. No, we're not even ex-officials. We are members. Yeah. But we don't vote.
Interesting there.
Do we vote? I don't know.
No, you don't.
It doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter whether
as long as in the Parliament, as long as you can speak.
Barusa, you said you are discussing a budget where really 90% of it you have not said.
No, it's
I love the light-hearted nature of that particular statement, but it could be a damning assessment of the workings of members of Parliament. When you acknowledge your ineffectiveness, how does that augur to you at the end of the day when you are sitting on these many committees, but within your own statement, the way you said it, it speaks of a man who has no power to do the things that you might want to do in helping you?
Well, first of all, I don't think you have nothing to do. Using the small space of Parliament, personally, because like a few months ago, I was the Shadow Minister for Finance. During that small space, that small platform, I think I've used it, and I think Honorable Semuju is continuing to do the same, to put forward many alternative things that have been fundamental to the way this economy runs. Right, that disclosure of
Bank of
Uganda loan. Originally it was never disclosed until I dug it up and put up the figure. And I think with the help of the World Bank, they insisted now it becomes a memo item on the budget. Because they needed to know a disclosure because it impacts performance. And for me it's very critical. Secondly, on the issues even of PDM, that extra government had come up, these Muhumuzas had come up with 17 million to give every parish. it was some of us in Parliament that exposed how that is tantamount to nothing. Bear was with us when we said, no, you have a problem with the district roads. What if you gave each road $1 billion shillings?
Yeah.
What will happen? Because MPs were being thrown in dust, leaders, because the road is bad. Before you know it, they were going to be dumped in a river. So said, find $1 billion. And today, as day follows night, the government boasts of doing it.
Okay.
That extravagance you see in the budget, the new rationalization was almost our petty, with Dr. Muhammad, petty government. Your government is so big, there's a lot of duplication. Please rationalize government. How it was done is a different story. What I also know about is that ideologically, you must now understand the people of Uganda have an ideal parliament which checks the executive. But the late Oranya, when I was speaking so much English, he called me and said, you know, you must know what you are doing. This parliament, ideologically, the way it's oriented, it does not check government. It facilitates government. When government wants to do even wrong things,
it goes to Parliament.
It goes to Parliament.
But also
for
the right
purposes of giving them a legal...
Not only wrong, but also the right...
No, what I'm saying, that's what you should rationalize.
Yeah.
Then the other thing is, what's the budget? A budget is largely a political tool. That's why the Muhammad Azia, I find issues with them. They think it's an economic tool.
It should be an economic tool.
That's why it will originate. It has the icing on the cake. Yes. Politics.
Yes,
it's not even now the icing.
The cake is supposed to be taken.
But this time it is the the cake.
That is the
real politics.
Part of it.
So the icing it's become the cake.
Yes, exactly. Now there is only icing on the table. There is no cake. There is no cake anymore.
There is no cake anymore. So that's whoever wants to understand this budget, especially the 2.5-year budget of the life of Parliament and the executive and the presidency has 2 life cycles. It has the first leg, which always informs the first budget and the second budget. Now, by the time you are going to the third budget of a 5-year term, now Parliament budget more and more answers issues to do with the power retention. Now, resources are not being mobilized now. That's why PDM, the 100 billion, they were easy for us to make noise about in the first leg. Today, the things that are being financed are those that will also contribute through the campaign fund.
Ahead of 2026. Because
here in this country, you don't fundraise. So you ask yourself, where do the leaders get the money? So this budget, you see, now, has more to do campaign fundraising. That's why the likes of Muhammad are surprised. Unless you understand the intention of those who are now deciding the budget.
What we know, or what I know, I should be very specific about the statement, is that Dr. Muhumza is already dismayed at the fact that government thinks that institutions of government and agencies will be critical sources of revenue, and that must not be the case at any one point in time. When you look at the 72 trillion shilling budget, and this one, please comment on very quickly before we can transition, what will be the critical sources and how effective is that money going to be claimed?
I have explained before that the 72 trillion budget is a joke.
Now let's deal with the joke.
It's the ice of the cake. The cake,
someone has taken the cake.
Or didn't make it.
Didn't make it even.
It is only the icing.
Wow. Because for the last, actually not for the last, since Uganda ever lived, the highest actual revenue ever been, I mean loans, whatever, NTR, grants, revenue, we have ever realized is about we have never exceeded 45 trillion. The actual money you get, and because it's the actual revenue can include even loans, even that project support, even budget support. Therefore, for anyone who draws a budget above 48 trillion, okay, 48 maximum, if you have to approach 48, if you have to go far, you stress it about 50, you are daydreaming and an absolute joker on a very grand platform. So guys in the Ministry of Finance, but the question is, there is a reason for it. The reason which I've explained is an expenditure schedule that Dr. Peya, Dr. Muhumuza and myself are not saying. Is that figure that determined how much the budget should balloon. There's going to be a supplementary schedule in the first month of July, which Parliament has not looked at, but those who know that they're going to spend money, they have looked at. It's the requirement, is it the denominator? It's that base that determined how much figure you should put out as a budget. So they required about 2, I will tell you. At first it was 6 trillion, obnoxious. Now they required 6 point something trillion. Now they reduced it to about 2.5. So 2.5 will be a yield of 3%. Now the 3%, if you want to yield 3%, and it is equal to 25. So how much of the other figure do you need? You needed about 72. At one time it was 75 something. Now it came back to 72. So it's that expenditure which I've called the most critical, and it will receive the first call, which will be brought to Parliament as supplementary 4 months after it has been spent. I want to challenge any economist in this country, any, including Muhumuza, including those in finance who are running the economy, to round table that schedule. If that table is laid on table, therefore, the parliamentary process, without addressing the 3% requirement schedule, is just also another bloody day joke. That's why we never debated it.
Dr. Muhumuza, I'm sure there is a lot you have to submit on Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi's own perspective. He sounds like the guy who shows you the coffin when you ask for roses. He's totally, I don't know how to describe it, but being a chairperson of the Parliamentary Accounts Committee and also sitting on the Budget Committee, his reading of these matters doesn't offer any hope to the Ugandan out there. Help us make sense of it all.
Yeah, thank you. I think let's really explain why we're saying the cake is not there. And we only have the icing. Because the budget process really begins with the technical. You send budget code circulars to the accounting officers, who are PSCs and local government cows and all sorts of fellows. Those are technical fellows. But under, they are working with the supervision of the politicians, district chairmen and councillors, who raise the issues that the people need. Now these people put the needs of the people into technical terminologies. People have said they want a health center 3 there. Now health center 3 can be political, because somebody wants to cut a ribbon, tell his people, I gave it to you. But for me, from the technical side, now those people have a service. So we both win. That's why I was saying the other one is the icing. But the real thing that people are going to eat is the medical service. That's the cake. Now, if at the end of the day, I don't see health services duly protected and provided in this budget, because it has all gone to debt service, because it has all gone to Parliament to debate what the people need, but not eventually to deliver what you debated, because there's no money left. Every time you pay wage and you pay non-wage, recurrent, that is 0. It is the non-wage that actually enables the person you pay the wage to deliver what the people need. I'm not just going to be happy that the teacher is paid or the policeman is paid. I'm going to be happy if I find that policeman on the road or in my village trying to make sure criminality is curbed. But that is the non-wage budget. Now, the real thing supposed to drive for us here, and I'm seeing the committee report, they're saying let's raise the revenue capacity of these government agencies like National Water, including possibly increasing the rate in order to improve service delivery. Now, if you increase the rate for water, are you improving service delivery for water? Because for us, we want the water at an affordable rate. Now, you're beginning to walk into dicey waters. You are saying we must increase the capacity of the economy. Let's borrow and do roads. Let's borrow and deliver electricity. Let's borrow and do these things. Then the private sector will deliver. Auditor General's report is saying the arrears to the private sector are 10 trillion plus. This budget is providing 200 billion to that same private sector, for which you're making the roads, so that it can actually come and employ people, produce and put goods on the economy so that traders don't import. Because now if there is no pen, my pen has to be imported because me I need a pen.
That's
and
right.
the trader will deliver that pen hook or crook. He's going to import it from wherever it is going to come from. But the traders, the manufacturer or the domestic person supposed to have done it is waiting for government to pay them. The bank is taking off their assets because they borrowed from the bank to deliver to government. Now government, instead of paying back, that 10 trillion should have been a priority. Because that is your private sector. Don't even tell me the 1 trillion of PDM. Because the PDM person who receives it, where does he pick the seed? From that agro dealer. Where the agro dealer is serviced by that off-taker who picks the maize from the communities. But this off-taker picks maize from the communities, went and did the government service, and he has not been paid. So you're killing everybody. So the whole logic of budgeting to speak to economic development is lost.
Professor, putting that this whole seller to this PDM person factors in how long it will take to pay back his money. So he makes it as the mark off. So the price is higher.
Now the person you gave 1 million, thinking the 1 million of PDM will give this much mileage, is going to be lost in a higher rating of a pricing. So pricing is a very critical thing, and that's why thank you very much. We knew about the 9 trillion, but we couldn't talk about it until it becomes a parliamentary document. Because by the way, that's the one thing I like about Parliament. Okay. The moment a document goes to Parliament, it's not a public document.
It's not a public document.
We can discuss it. Now, 9 trillion is different from recapitalization. Recapitalization was really monetary policy management, but this is a fiscal issue. And any money coming from the central bank by any economic standards from senior 5 to senior 6 is inflationary. So who is driving inflation in this country? We are going to have to debate this on whether the 9 trillion is not feeding into inflation, and which therefore we should change the thinking of Bank of Uganda to say, I'm raising central bank rate to deal with inflation. You should actually be tackling it from the fiscal side, reducing this money that is going to finance the government budget and manage prices and level the ground. So now, the biggest risk for me is the sovereign risk. The state is the biggest threat to our economy. And yet it is supposed to be the anchor of economic growth. Finally, all these numbers that the budgets have been going up, we have done the simple mathematics. It's not complicated. Just a correlation analysis. You don't find a positive relationship.
A simple.
Correlation is that when you have eaten, you should grow. You should grow. And when a child is taken to the doctors, they say the child is now 12 months, but the weight is not of a 12 months. So there is a weight for height, for age, weight for age. Those are just correlating things to say. If the child is growing tall, the weight should be increasing.
Yeah, sure.
So if the budget is growing taller, the economy should be growing. Now, when you do those two things, there is a negative relationship. That the bigger the government budget, the lower the growth rate.
Interesting. The Honorable Apea, the raft of taxes that have been rolled out in light of the bills that were passed, the latest, of course, that involved excise duty, government efforts to ensure that it gets the revenue that it needs. But again, it goes to squeeze the private sector, which is already grappling with high interest rates. There is a lack of capital itself to be able to inject in businesses. How do you see this working out?
Thank you. The issue of tax and tax bills and tax rates, I think we've discussed it for a while. And as a country and leaders, we believe that the best way of generating revenue is to widen the tax base. other than going to squeeze from that same cow that has been producing and is no longer producing milk. In fact, the cow could be now producing maybe even blood, if blood can come.
That is if the cow is still there.
If the cow is even still there. So anyway, I think our tax strategy, first of all, needs to change. Two, as Parliament, we've urged government that we need to develop a tax policy where there is a trajectory of, after 5 years, this is 1, 2, 3 things that we are going to do. But what we see in Parliament is that every year, in fact, I sit in the Finance Committee, during the budgeting period like this as Finance Committee, sometimes we work up to midnight because every year we are coming with new things because we do not have that policy that guides the country. So the issue of taxation, and for this year, I have said again, and I will say it again, that we do not need to go and start taxing, for example, the fuel, and tax the production, and go and tax the land or the building materials, because those are areas where we have seen growth in the economy. Then the other issue is also that when you tax, for example, fuel, you're sure that you're escalating the pricing issue that Dr. Mhumuza is talking about, because fuel is that driver of almost the whole value chain. Because if the border man's price is high, it means that coming to bring food to Nakawa, the price for bringing the transportation price will increase. Therefore, the price of that product will also increase. So I think our taxmen, the URA, are doing a very good job. But they are not being supported to actually go where there is that much money. And we've always highlighted, we have a report that shows how much money we have buried in the tax exemptions. And we are not saying tax exemptions is bad, but who is given and how is it given? What's the process? What's the return on that tax revenue? And actually studies have shown, I think over the weekend we were with the professors, and studies have shown as economists, we know that it is not true that tax exemptions or tax incentives actually translates into growth or into more revenue. So I think the issue of taxation, and that brings us to this budget. Much as we are talking about 72 trillion, our targeted domestic revenue within the country is just 31 trillion. And that tells you that even as a country alone, we are going to depend on, I think, over 60% or 51% of now borrowing to run the country. So I think the issue of taxation and the issue of domestic revenue generation is a very critical issue that we need to focus on as a country. Okay. But also as citizens of this country, we need to appreciate our role as well of paying taxes. But when we pay the taxes, we want to see the benefits of paying the tax, so that we are not the service delivery, the roads, the hospitals, the schools, and all that. So there is a lot of so many other issues that needs to be addressed, so that we can actually have a very smooth ride and a very kind of balanced debate. Other than, because for sure, when you look at this budget, very few people believe that this 72 budget will actually be delivered, because I mean, we've been sitting with the Honorable Chivumbi here for the last 3 years in the budget, that even the tax revenue target, the revenue target we have put, we've never achieved that as a country in the last 3 years. We've never achieved the target. And then also the budget performance that is normally presented to us, we have never achieved it. Whenever they present a budget performance, we have actually realized that the actual money that is released to these sectors to deliver the services is different. They will show you that we did they call them what? The one that the finance gives the sectors so that they can now start processing their procurement warrants. They will send you warrants of what you have in the budget, but the actual cash that will be released to deliver that service is completely different. Okay. So I think as a country, as technical people, as leaders, we've got to start being factual and be able to cut these clothes according to our size, other than thinking we are too big when we are actually very small. That's
a question we can put to Honorable Mwanga Chivumbi. Do we even have what it takes to cut this cloth by our size? You are superintending over the accounts committee, and within this you interface on, well, a daily basis with agencies of government on aspects like poor absorption capacity. But the issue of corruption, there are those who are saying 72 trillion Uganda shillings is telling the corrupt and whoever wants to go for the money that we have a bigger cash from which to dip our hands.
Well, but let's go first sort out matters tax.
Okay.
The problem why we are here is budget indiscipline. This government made a charter of fiscal responsibility at the beginning of this financial year. That, and we made a lot of input in this charter of fiscal responsibility. We even capped government expenditure. Said government expenditure should be, if it's to increase expenditure, should be proportionate to increased revenue. You factor in your revenue before you increase the expenditure. We actually saying cap your expenditure. We also put a revenue mobilization target. Because in the East African region, we are still below 16%. We are at 13%. The question why we are below 13%, that we don't even go for the low-hanging fruits. They were, before I came, they were speaking about the minerals. How can you be this mineral rich and you're exporting so much gold, so much everything, and you earn zero from it? Because minerals, much as it is expensive to extract, it's just there. We were promised some time back by these professors of how much money will be collected from fish, from the fish mold. I have not seen any figure. We are told, people talk about oil, there's this Nairo patch here. There's a lot of money on fish mold. Where is the money that comes from fish mold? Zero. Then the other day you hear the Minister of Revenue thought he was collecting money from these gold dealers. They had actually said we will pay. Then all of a sudden, a certain minister issues an instrument.
Some of them actually had begun to pay.
Some of them, yes, some of them had begun to pay, and some were performing very well. But some stubbornly 3 people went to court and blah, blah, and stopped. And the minister said, wave, 600 billion. You have Bujagali. Okay?
That one.
When we did an investigation, we realized government should actually demand the money from bail, what they call bail, from Bujagali, to huge sums of money. You don't get that tax. All these other rich people in Uganda no longer pay. All these, so many of those factories.
In fact, there's been a market reduction in especially the top taxpayers.
Yes, then there is a challenge. And this challenge we debated about. If your tax contribution, a big portion is pay as you earn, then you have also a problem. Because Dr. Khan is the one who cracks the number, sometimes I don't have the time. If you picked out, pay as you earn, that is for government workers, how much do you remain with? But now it is government paying. I mean, I pay from this pocket, I collect from this pocket. In other jurisdictions, government workers, by the way, because you can wait for them at the grocery and you tax them, VAT, and as they spend the money. But here you are, you also pick some of it. So even our tax, that's why many agencies are now saying, and this is also becoming a trend, many judicial says don't pay tax. DPP says don't pay tax. Before you know it, the Attorney General will come and say, please exempt us. So each and every sector now, you are going on.
They are learning from Parliament.
No, but we pay tax.
Parliament pays tax incidentally.
Certain things that...
No, Parliament pays tax. Where they don't pay tax is an emolument.
You're not paying tax sufficiently.
Sufficient, yes. Yeah, and for me,
and yet we are paying you sufficiently.
Dr. Payer knows I've been the flow of Parliament. Guys, you must pay.
No,
if you are to hold. So, therefore, the question is, can everybody pay his dues and play his role? Let the big boys pay. But the big players are not paying. The big players are not paying. Now, the other question goes on after that.
Maybe to add on that, actually, there are no big boys, because we're even seeing the private sector coming again for money, free money from government.
Yes.
And yet money is in the bank for them to do the business. So there's actually even no private sector.
Then government is making it. Government of Uganda cannot be a land of last resort for every unbankable idea. You get it? A tech comes up, says, I want to grow sugar, blah, blah. If you have a good proposal for sugar, the banks will give you the money. If you have a good proposal for pharmacy, this dye pharmacy,
the banks should be able to provide.
The bank should be able, smart man is there waiting for good ideas to fund. Now, government of Uganda, now, whoever has a very fun idea that is not bankable, or you have banks have given you money and it failed, you run for government to bail you out. So Rocco, where you cannot afford an economy where so many players are on oxygen. ICC.
Quickly comment on the ability of agencies to improve absorption capacity.
No, the agencies, he has told you, you pay people wage. You don't release non-wage. When you release non-wage, you don't release development.
And you release in June.
You release in June. First of all, so why are you paying? Like you, they pay you, you have no guests. And but you sit in the studio. Are you going to give out a product?
A linkage to that is many of these agencies work through private sector because they contract and outsource. Now, those are the areas. They outsourced somebody 2 years ago. You have not paid. You think I'll come back to offer government service?
Yeah, offer government service. Zero. And what I also interact with the high levels of corruption in PAC. Every government agency will fear to appear before PAC. And the reason why is because their books of accounts are not clean.
Very clear.
And I can tell you, I've now done a bit of PAC business for the last 3 months. No single agency, even the Treasury, even the Bank of Uganda, even the Revenue Authority, none is above board. Not a single one is above board.
Wow.
And you don't even have to, I've been speaking to some agencies, said, but you're supposed to be role models. If others are wrong, you can't afford to be wrong. And you're like, should I also expose? You see, the heart will be so much in the country and loss of confidence. I've been to universities where these professors who teach us these things teach. Mess. Total mess. You go to health institution, total mess. You go to accountability bodies, even if you called the auditor general and audited him, you're also in the mess, internal processes.
He's the one who is audited.
You call IGG and say, now I want to look into you.
Into your books.
He has more problems.
He has more problems. You look for DPP. Say, I want to look into you. Look for Ministry of Justice. Problems. Then you ask yourself.
All right, gentlemen and lady, in light of the budget theme, full monetization of Uganda's economy through commercial agriculture, industrialization, expanding and broadening services, digital transformation and market access, is this lip service? Is it the latest in a series of coming up with big bombastic words, or do we really see any actual ability for industrialization, expanding and broadening of services, and then this whole thing about digital transformation across board? Is it any low-hanging fruit anyway?
Going back to the theme, I've always argued in Parliament and in very many spaces, why don't we as a country pick 1 or 2 things for this year and say, this is what we are going to do?
Or even for this decade.
Or even maybe for 10 years. And then say, this is what we are going to do.
I understand.
For example, the way the Tanzanians have done, they decided we are going to have, is it speed railway or something? We are going to connect our country. And they've done it. And you see, actually the other day when they were opening, I'm like, is this our neighbor? Are we in Europe? Who has bewitched us as a country? So for me, from the framers of these words, for sure, let us not spread so thin. I know we have so many needs, but I think it's a high time we sat down and decided what is it that is most pressing for the next 10 years. We have that in, for example, we have a national development plan, which clearly stipulated what we should do. I expected that we would really be like focusing there. When you see the ministerial policy statement, they'll write the best words, how they have aligned themselves to NPA. But when we went back in another space to now critically analyze our national development plan, is it 4, which is ending? We have not, Doctor, maybe you have the current figures now, but as far as I know, last year, we were not yet even at 30%. Is there maybe an improvement in the next 1 year?
I'm not surprised that we are not there, because the things we lumped in are things we can't do. When you find East African, the EACOP, East African crude oil pipeline, which already had its own challenges. An elephant will deliver, is it 18 months? So you don't put yourself a target and say, within 7 months, I'm going to have some elephants around here. Some things are beyond your control.
So anyway, the words, the theme, somebody should sit down and say, if it is agriculture, let's go agriculture. And tell us how you're going to do that in 1 year. Can you achieve all that in 1 year? That we have put
commercial
there?
agriculture, industrialization, expanding and broadening services, digital transformation, market access. Honorable Chivumbi,
it is
where should we focus?
It is everything.
For me,
so can you do everything, even in your home?
You. The quickest focus, can you stick to even a wrong budget?
Now you have disorganized.
No, for me, let me tell you, even if you've issued a wrong budget, can you stick to it? If for once you can do away with the supplementaries. Because the first distortion of the budget starts on July 1st. That so-called expenditure schedule,
now this 72
that is below. You cannot
with a supplementary coming.
You can't have a supplementary on the 1st of July. When you have just given you a whole budget. So for me, even if the budget is wrong, can we stick to it? That's the first thing. Even if it is superficial, can we stick to the budget? Small entities in our homes, that's what we do. You don't have a lot of money. You have a long list of needs. Schools, our kids are going back to school. They did all manner of things, but you've done that like a shopping list. And said, this I will say, this I will afford, this I will afford, this I will. But which kind of a country, by the way, does for a supplementary budget on the first call on the real budget? It is absolutely silly. And why I'm becoming hard on the people who are distorting this, and I'll spend the entire bit of this time speaking loudly about this. It is the source of our problem. 2, can we pay for what we caution? Small things. If government contracted Muhumuza to do a particular job, and he does, pay him. Now, why do you call a man of China a statutory obligation, and me, who has supplied you, it's not a statutory obligation? That is a sovereignty issue.
Yeah, this is true.
Me, who has supplied government 10 billion.
My cassava.
My cassava is a receivable. You reduce it, is it a payable? You call it a payable. It's just a payable. I'll pay you, I'll pay you, yeah, I'll pay you. Now, for them China, who has done the same job, on the same contract, and for it, it's a statutory obligation. That is imperialism. Can we also acknowledge the 10 trillion has a statutory obligation on behalf? Let's do the small. You people want to go for growth things, big things. 2, the last thing, can government pay back Bank of Uganda money?
Now that one is a big one.
Okay, and stop this.
How much are we looking at?
9 trillion.
9 trillion.
9 trillion. And mark you, it has grown from 4 last year to 9. So that means in the whole of this financial year, government of Uganda, Bank of Uganda paid money on behalf of this government, and government failed to reimburse.
Is it among the KPIs for the deputy governor, since we don't have a governor?
I don't think it's lack of governor. It's not you have a banker.
The KPI on the finance side.
Yes,
to pay.
To pay.
All right.
No. For you have a bank. You give them a standing order. For when electricity bills come, you pay. For this, you pay. At the end of the month, you disappear. And you don't pay.
Okay. let's begin the wrap, because time is not our best ally in as far as this morning's discussion is concerned. Dr. Fred Muhumuza, in light of the perspectives and submissions that you've heard from the honourable members of Parliament, they are buried in the process of discussing many of these, what I see as 2 steps forward and then 3 backwards, which effectively means we are moving backwards. How do we realign economic policy and then begin to move in a way that can actually help us realize some of our aspirations as a country?
Yeah, thank you. Just in a few minutes.
I won't be paying you for consultancy on that, but please.
Economic policy is supposed to be informed by economics.
Yeah.
But
politics.
in the case of Uganda, as we've said, more have politics dictating what you need to do. But even when it does that, you analyze your wrong thing that you have done. Say, I'm more driving on the wrong route, so I have no right of way to continue. Then back and rethink. Now, the dynamics we are seeing here, you want Revenue Authority to raise more money. We are seeing in their report, in the first half year, we have almost 450 billion shortfall of revenues that arose out of shortfalls in VAT on imports. Now, URA cannot determine imports. Shortfall on excise duty on imports, 450 billion. Now, that's the economics. So you cannot tax when the economics is looking the other way. If you're importing and you're importing goods from countries, you cannot tax because these are East African countries. That reality should feed into your budget. So I hope we are not now factoring these revenue expectations on URA when it is very clear the dynamics have changed, that these are taxes you can no longer pick going by what has happened within the economic system. So let's let the economics inform the policies, then you can do your politics as the icing on the cake.
Honourable Apea, your last words.
Thank you very much. For me, I think let's be patriotic and let us do what we are supposed to do. Because in all these discussions, the biggest animal is corruption. My colleague sits in PAC, I sit in budget. You see in that budget, we have really left what we are supposed to do, and we are doing what we are not supposed to do. We put money where we know it is for somebody, but not for the bigger good of the country. And for me, I think equity is very important. Coordination among government agencies is very important, because as budget committee we have actually identified budget items which should have been done by this one ministry. For example, what they call app, the digitization you are talking about. Every agency is coming to buy an app, and we are asking, what's the use of Ministry of ICT, or is it NIRA, or people who do those app things?
Providing something
It should have been like holistic for a government, e-government kind of running and all that. And I think to wind it up is that as a country, we are a very rich country. We have all it takes to do all that government would intend to do. Our biggest problem is how to prioritize within the priorities. We seem to put money where we shouldn't have.
All right, thank you very much, Honourable Apea. Mwanga Chivumbi, your very last word. You've already told us, let's stick to doing the wrong thing the right way.
Even if they're wrong way. Even thieves.
Even thieves.
Agree. That
You have 60
that today we are going to steal from Apea, and they go for Apea.
And they steal.
But for you, you see, Honorable Mao told us, if you want to catch Enkof, what is Enkof in English? Jennifer. You chase one.
Just one.
Just chase one. But if you chase this one, this one, when you see this, I say this is fatter. So
you end up not catching any.
You end up not catching any of them.
Right.
So for me, the first things we must do, stick to the budget. And let's have budget. There's nothing so big that you don't want to put on the table and is worthwhile. You have something that is a game changer. You are telling us attacking northern Uganda is a game changer. You don't want to discuss it on table. You are telling us this pharmacy here, it will really change. Put it on table. Let's holistically. No, what amazes me, we've spent time on RAPEX. What has happened?
Yes. The budgets are the same.
If
There's
you
no
don't want,
rationalization.
you want to see the level of disorganization we are in, you evaluate them on this rationalization.
All right. I hope that disorganization as a country can be put to the attention of those that are supposed to ensure that we get organized.
But
for happy
some surprise for Doctor.
Very
I think
quickly.
Bobby will
Some
have
surprise.
dinner with you today. For the house
Maona
smart.
Chivumbi, chairperson
I've
of the
always
Public
told you there is no
Accounts Committee,
color in economics.
chairman of the Uganda
The
Parliamentary
economics,
Caucus.
the economics,
Many
no
thanks
color.
for coming through this morning, and many thanks to you too, Dr. Fred Muhumuza, a seasoned economics and commentator, for always making time. Agnes Atim Apea is the woman MP for Amolata. She's also a member of the Budget Committee as well as the Finance Committee. Of course, in the corridors, this conversation will be continuing between Dr. Fred Muhumuza and the honorable members of Parliament. For now, though, let's go for a break. My colleague Stephen Mbide is standing by and will be returning with an update of what's on the ground. Sorry.